The afternoon sunlight was brutal as I stood in my driveway, watching the HOA president, Patricia Cunningham, march toward me with a clipboard and the kind of expression that promised nothing but trouble. I had just finished installing my new propane setup for my backup generator and outdoor kitchen, and apparently, someone had noticed. That someone was Patricia, a woman in her late 40s who treated our subdivision in Henderson, Nevada like it was her personal kingdom. Her blonde bob haircut never moved in the wind, held rigid by what must have been an entire can of hairspray, and her lips were pressed into that permanent line of disapproval that seemed to be a requirement for HOA board members. My name is Harrison Zimmerman, and I had lived in Desert View Estates for 3 years. I was a software developer who worked from home, which meant I needed reliable backup power during the occasional outages. Living in Nevada, temperatures could get brutal, and losing power meant losing air conditioning, which could be dangerous. The propane setup I had installed was professional grade, done by a licensed contractor, and followed every safety code I could find. "Mr. Zimmerman," Patricia called out, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "We need to discuss this unauthorized installation on your property." I wiped the sweat from my forehead and turned to face her fully. "Hello, Patricia. What installation are you referring to?" She gestured dramatically toward the propane tank beside my garage, a clean white 100-gallon tank that sat on a proper concrete pad with all the required clearances. That monstrosity. "You did not submit plans to the Architectural Review Committee, and you certainly did not receive approval before installation." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my emails. "Actually, I submitted the plans 6 weeks ago." I received no response, which according to Section 12 of the HOA bylaws means automatic approval after 30 days of silence. Patricia's face flushed red. "That clause is for minor modifications. This is a major installation that affects the appearance of the community. It's behind a privacy fence and can't be seen from the street," I pointed out, keeping my voice level. "The fence had been there when I bought the house, approved by the previous owner years ago." "That's irrelevant. The tank itself is a safety hazard and I'm calling for an inspection. If it doesn't pass, you'll be required to remove it immediately and face fines for unauthorized construction." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my composure. "I welcome an inspection." The installation was done by Desert Mountain Propane. They're licensed and insured, and everything meets Nevada state codes. Patricia smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We'll see about that. I'm calling the fire marshal's office first thing tomorrow morning. You'll be hearing from them soon." She turned on her heel and marched back toward her own house, 3 streets over in the development. I watched her go, feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach despite knowing my installation was solid. HOAs had a way of making your life miserable even when you were in the right. That evening I called my installer, a guy named Mike who had been working with propane systems for over 20 years. I explained what happened, and he laughed. "Harrison, I've done hundreds of these installations. Yours is textbook perfect. Better than code, actually. I gave you extra clearances and used premium materials. Let them inspect. I'll come by if they have any questions." His confidence made me feel better, but I still spent that night reviewing all my documentation. I had photos of every step of the installation, copies of Mike's licenses and insurance, the manufacturer's specs for every component and receipts for everything. I organized it all into a folder, both digital and physical. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 8 o'clock sharp. I opened it to find Patricia standing there with a man in his 30s wearing khaki pants and a polo shirt with the county fire marshal's logo embroidered on it. "Mr. Zimmerman, "This is Inspector David Chen from the Fire Marshal's office. He's here to inspect your propane installation," Patricia announced with barely concealed glee. Inspector Chen extended his hand and I shook it. He seemed professional and polite, nothing like Patricia's aggressive demeanor. "Good morning, Mr. Zimmerman. I understand you recently installed a propane system. Would you mind if I take a look?" "Not at all. Please come around back. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Water would be great, thank you." I grabbed 3 bottles of water from my fridge and led them both around the side of the house to where my propane setup stood. Patricia stayed close to Inspector Chen, clearly ready to point out whatever violations she expected to find. The inspector walked slowly around the tank, measuring distances with a laser measure, checking the concrete pad with a level, examining the regulator, the pressure relief valve, the piping connections, and the grounding system. He took photos and made notes on a tablet. The whole time, Patricia hovered like a vulture waiting for a meal. "Who did your installation?" Inspector Chen asked. "Desert Mountain Propane. Mike Rothstein was the lead installer. Here's his information, along with all the permits and documentation." I handed him the folder I had prepared. He flipped through it, nodding occasionally. Then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled out a small electronic device and started testing the connections for leaks. Everything checked clean. He verified the pressure settings, checked the emergency shutoff valve, and even examined how the system integrated with my generator. After about 45 minutes of thorough inspection, Inspector Chen straightened up and made a few final notes on his tablet. Patricia was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Well," she demanded, "what violations did you find?" Inspector Chen looked at her, then at me. "None. This is one of the cleanest propane installations I've seen in residential settings. Everything exceeds code requirements. The clearances are better than minimum standards. The components are all high quality and properly rated, and the installation workmanship is excellent. Mr. Zimmerman, you're fully compliant." I felt relief wash over me, but Patricia's expression went from anticipation to fury in about 2 seconds. "That can't be right. Check it again. There must be something wrong." Inspector Chen's professional demeanor cooled noticeably. "Madam, I've been doing this for 8 years. The installation is not only compliant but exemplary. Mr. Zimmerman has nothing to worry about." Patricia sputtered for a moment, then gathered herself. "Fine, but I want a written report stating everything you found. The HOA board will review it." "Of course. Mr. Zimmerman will receive a copy of my report within 3 business days." Inspector Chen turned back to me. "Out of curiosity, who supplies your propane?" "Desert Mountain Propane handles both installation and supply." "Why do you ask?" He hesitated for a moment, glancing at Patricia. "I notice you live in Desert View Estates. The HOA clubhouse and pool area also use propane, correct?" Patricia stiffened. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Nothing, necessarily," Inspector Chen said carefully. "It's just that while I'm here, and since I've already been called out to this neighborhood, I should probably do a routine inspection of the HOA's propane systems as well." "When was the last time they were inspected?" The color drained from Patricia's face. "I don't have that information readily available." "You're the HOA president, correct? You should have records of all safety inspections for common area facilities." "Yes. Well, we have a management company that handles those details." Inspector Chen pulled out his phone and started typing. "What's the management company's name?" "Desert Realty Management," Patricia said, her voice tight. "But I really don't think this is necessary right now." "Madam, if you call me out to inspect a residential propane system, and there are commercial propane systems in the same neighborhood," It's my responsibility to verify that all systems are compliant. It's standard procedure. What's the address of the clubhouse? Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but Inspector Chen's expression made it clear this wasn't optional. She provided the address through gritted teeth. I'll head over there now. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Zimmerman. You'll receive your clearance documentation shortly. Inspector Chen shook my hand again, nodded curtly to Patricia, and headed back to his county vehicle. Patricia stood in my backyard for a moment, looking like she had just swallowed something bitter. "This isn't over," she said to me before storming off. I watched her go, feeling confused about what had just happened but also curious. Why had she reacted so strongly to Inspector Chen wanting to check the HOA's propane systems? I didn't have to wait long to find out. My phone rang 2 hours later. It was my neighbor, Craig Morrison, who lived 4 houses down. Craig was a retired electrician and one of the few reasonable people on the HOA board, constantly outvoted by Patricia and her allies. "Harrison, you need to hear this. All hell is breaking loose at the clubhouse. The inspector that checked your place apparently found major violations with the HOA's propane system. They've shut down the whole thing. Patricia is losing her mind." I grabbed my keys. "I'm on my way." The clubhouse was only a 5-minute drive. When I arrived, I found quite a scene. Inspector Chen's vehicle was parked near the outdoor kitchen area beside the pool. Patricia was there, along with 2 other HOA board members, Karen Winters and Deborah Sheffield, both cut from the same cloth as Patricia. A man in a suit, probably from the management company, was also present. They were all watching as Inspector Chen tagged various components of the propane system with bright red violation stickers. I parked and walked over, staying at a polite distance, but close enough to hear what was happening. "This entire system needs to be shut down immediately," Inspector Chen was saying, his voice firm and professional but with an edge that suggested he was not happy with what he had found. "The regulator is outdated and should have been replaced 5 years ago. The pressure relief valve is corroded. Multiple connections show signs of leaks. The tank itself hasn't been recertified in over a decade. The clearances from the building don't meet current code, and these grills are sitting on decking material without proper fire barriers underneath." The man in the suit was typing frantically on his phone. "We'll get our contractor out here immediately to address these issues." "Who's your contractor?" Inspector Chen asked. "Budget Propane Services," the man replied. Inspector Chen's expression darkened. "Budget Propane. Are they aware that their license was suspended 2 months ago pending investigation of safety violations at multiple commercial sites?" Dead silence. "I'm sorry, what?" The management company representative looked genuinely shocked. "Budget Propane Services had their license suspended in February. If they've been servicing this system, those services were performed illegally. I'm going to need to see all maintenance records for this system immediately." Patricia found her voice. "This is ridiculous. Our systems have been maintained regularly. This is clearly a witch hunt because Mr. Zimmerman over there has some kind of connection with you." Inspector Chen turned slowly to look at Patricia, and his expression could have frozen lava. "Madam, I met Mr. Zimmerman for the first time this morning. I am a county inspector performing my duties according to Nevada state law and county regulations. Are you suggesting that I am conducting an improper inspection?" "I'm suggesting that it's awfully convenient that you found nothing wrong with his system and everything wrong with ours. The difference, madam, is that Mr. Zimmerman's system was installed by a licensed, reputable contractor using quality components and proper procedures. Your system appears to have been neglected for years and possibly serviced by an unlicensed contractor. These are facts, not opinions. Now, I need those maintenance records. The management representative was still typing. I'm requesting them from our files right now. We should have everything documented. It took about 15 minutes for the records to be pulled up on a tablet and shown to Inspector Chen. As he scrolled through them, his frown deepened. According to these records, your last inspection was 4 years ago. Nevada code requires annual inspections for commercial propane systems. You're 3 years overdue. Furthermore, several recommended repairs from that last inspection were never completed. He looked up at the management representative. Who's responsible for ensuring compliance? The man swallowed hard. The management company coordinates with the HOA board to schedule and approve maintenance and inspections. Inspector Chen turned to Patricia. As HOA president, were you aware that these inspections were overdue? Patricia's face was scarlet. The management company is supposed to handle those details. But the board approves the expenditures, correct? These inspection reports would have been provided to you. Did you not read them? I don't recall seeing any reports about propane systems. The management representative, clearly trying to cover himself, jumped in. All inspection reports and maintenance recommendations are included in the monthly reports provided to the board. We also send separate emails highlighting any safety-related items requiring attention or approval. I receive hundreds of emails, Patricia snapped. I can't be expected to read every single one in detail. You're the president of a homeowners association responsible for the safety of common area facilities, Inspector Chen said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Yes, actually, you can be expected to read safety-related communications. Now, here's what's going to happen. This entire propane system is red tagged as of this moment. It cannot be used until all violations are corrected and a re-inspection is passed. The tank will be locked out. Do not attempt to use any of these appliances. Karen Winters, one of the other board members, finally spoke up. But we have a community event scheduled for this weekend. We need the outdoor kitchen. Then you should have maintained your system properly. The red tag stands. Additionally, I'll be filing a report with the county about the suspected use of an unlicensed contractor. That may result in further investigation and potential fines. Patricia looked like she was going to explode. This is outrageous. I want to speak to your supervisor. Inspector Chen pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Here's the contact information for the fire marshal's office. Feel free to file a complaint. However, the red tag is not negotiable. This system is unsafe and remains shut down until properly repaired and inspected. If I find that anyone has tampered with these tags or attempted to use this system, there will be serious legal consequences. He took several more photos, had the management representative sign some documents on his tablet, and then walked back to his vehicle. As he passed by me, he paused. Mr. Zimmerman, your system really is excellent, by the way. When you see Mike Rothstein, tell him I said he does quality work. I will. Thank you, Inspector. He nodded and drove off, leaving chaos in his wake. Patricia immediately turned on me, marching over with fury in her eyes. This is your fault. You brought him here. You've sabotaged the HOA. I didn't bring him anywhere. You called him to inspect my system, remember? He chose to inspect yours as standard procedure. That's convenient, Karen Winters said, joining Patricia. Awfully convenient. Craig Morrison had also arrived, and he stepped forward. This is absurd, Patricia. Harrison didn't cause your propane system to be neglected for years. The inspector found legitimate violations that put residents at risk. Stay out of this, Craig, Patricia hissed. This is board business. I'm on the board, Craig reminded her. And I'm pretty sure I never saw any reports about overdue propane inspections. When were you planning to share those with the rest of us? The management company handles maintenance schedules, Patricia repeated, but her voice lacked conviction now. And the board approves expenditures and reviews safety reports, Craig countered. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night. We need to review exactly what's been going on with our maintenance and safety inspections. I decided it was time to leave before things got uglier. I headed back to my truck, but before I could get there, Deborah Sheffield blocked my path. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she said. "Coming into this neighborhood, flouting the rules, undermining the HOA. We work hard to maintain property values here." "I followed all the rules," I said calmly. "I submitted my plans, waited the required time, used licensed contractors, and met all safety codes. What exactly did I do wrong? You have an ugly propane tank visible from your yard. It's behind a privacy fence. You can't see it from the street or from any other property. It's still an eyesore. Then don't look at it. Now, if you'll excuse me." I sidestepped her and got into my truck. As I drove away, I could see the three of them huddled together, probably planning their next move. I had a feeling this was far from over. That evening, I received an email from Inspector Chen with my official inspection report attached. It was glowing. Every section checked out perfectly, with his notes praising the quality of the installation and the thoroughness of the documentation I had provided. I saved multiple copies and printed one for my records. The next day, I got a call from Mike Rothstein. "Harrison, I heard about what happened at the clubhouse. Word travels fast in the propane business. Inspector Chen called me personally to compliment the work we did on your system. He said to tell you that you do quality work." Mike laughed. "I appreciate that. Listen, I got a call about an hour ago from Desert Realty Management. They want us to repair and upgrade the HOA's propane system. I quoted them a fair price for the work, and they nearly had a heart attack. Apparently, they're used to paying budget propane about a third of what legitimate contractors charge. Let me guess, they asked if you could lower your price." "Yep." I told them my price is based on doing the work correctly, using quality parts, and standing behind my work with proper licensing and insurance. If they want cheap work, they can find someone else, but it won't be legal since budget propane is suspended. What did they say? They said they'd get back to me. I'm not holding my breath. Some people never learn. The emergency HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following evening at 7 o'clock. It was open to all residents, so I decided to attend. I wanted to see how this played out, and I had a feeling Patricia might try to make me a scapegoat somehow. The community center meeting room was packed. Apparently, word had spread about the propane system being shut down, and people were concerned. The weekend community barbecue event had been canceled, which annoyed a lot of residents. Patricia called the meeting to order, flanked by Karen Winters and Deborah Sheffield on one side, and Craig Morrison and another board member, Tom Bradley, on the other. Tom was a pharmacist who generally tried to stay neutral on board issues, avoiding confrontation whenever possible. "We're here to discuss the unfortunate situation with our propane system," Patricia began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Due to an overzealous inspector who was called to the neighborhood for unrelated reasons, our perfectly functional propane system has been unfairly red-tagged." Craig immediately interrupted. "That's not accurate, Patricia. The inspector found multiple legitimate safety violations." "We have his full report." Patricia's lips tightened. "The violations are minor maintenance issues being blown out of proportion." "A corroded pressure relief valve is not a minor issue," Craig said, holding up a printed copy of the inspection report. Gas leaks are not minor issues. An expired tank certification is not a minor issue. These are serious safety problems that could have resulted in injuries or worse. A murmur went through the crowd. Patricia tried to regain control. The management company assured us that all maintenance was being handled appropriately. This is not the board's fault. A woman in the third row stood up. I recognized her as Linda Hayes, whose house was near the clubhouse. I've been smelling gas near the pool area for the past 2 months. I reported it to the management company twice. Nothing was ever done about it. Now I know why. Several other residents started talking at once, sharing similar concerns. Patricia banged her gavel, looking flustered. If residents had concerns, they should have been reported through proper channels. I used the proper channels, Linda shot back. I filled out maintenance request forms online and called the management office. I was told someone would look into it. No one ever did. The management company representative, the same man from the day before, stood up. Miss Hayes, I apologize if your concerns weren't addressed promptly. We'll review our maintenance request logs to determine what happened. You'd better review more than that, Craig said. According to this inspection report, we've been using an unlicensed contractor for propane services. Budget Propane Services has had their license suspended for safety violations. Were you aware of this? The representative shifted uncomfortably. We were not aware until the inspector informed us yesterday. How long have we been using Budget Propane? Approximately 3 years. And in those 3 years, how many inspections did they perform on our system? The representative checked his tablet. According to our records, they performed routine maintenance twice but no formal inspections. We're required to have annual inspections. That means we're missing at least 2 inspections. Why wasn't this caught? Patricia interjected. The management company is responsible for tracking these schedules. And the board is responsible for oversight, Craig countered. Did anyone on this board ever review the maintenance schedules or safety inspection reports? Silence from Patricia, Karen, and Deborah. Tom Bradley raised his hand hesitantly. I never saw any safety inspection reports in our monthly packets. I would have remembered something like that. Craig nodded. I didn't see them either. Patricia, as president, you receive additional detailed reports from the management company. Were you aware that our propane inspections were overdue? Patricia's face flushed. I receive extensive documentation every month. I can't be expected to memorize every detail, but you're expected to read and act on safety-related information. Did you read the reports? I skimmed them. Did you skim the parts about overdue safety inspections and recommended repairs? I don't recall seeing anything urgent. The management representative, clearly trying to distance his company from the board's negligence, spoke up again. Our reports clearly flag safety items in red text with urgent priority markers. These items are also sent in separate email notifications to the board president and vice president. Karen Winters, the vice president, suddenly looked very uncomfortable. I may have missed some emails. A man in the back stood up. So what you're telling us is that both the president and vice president ignored safety warnings, and now we're stuck with a shut-down propane system and potential liability. We're working on getting the system repaired, Patricia said quickly. We've solicited quotes from contractors. How much is this going to cost? Someone else asked. Patricia hesitated. We're still reviewing quotes. Give us a ballpark figure, Craig pressed. Estimates range from $8,000 to $15,000 depending on the extent of repairs needed. The room erupted. $15,000 was a significant expense that would likely require either a special assessment or depleting the HOA's reserve fund. How did you let it get this bad? Linda Hayes demanded. Regular maintenance would have been much cheaper. We used budget propane because they offered economical service, Patricia said defensively. We were trying to be fiscally responsible. Fiscally responsible would have been using licensed contractors and keeping up with inspections, Craig said. Cheap is not the same as economical when it compromises safety and ends up costing more in the long run. I had been sitting quietly in the back, but I felt eyes turning toward me. Patricia noticed and seized the opportunity. Of course, none of this would have happened if certain residents hadn't bypassed HOA authority and brought inspectors into our neighborhood, she said, looking directly at me. Craig shook his head in disbelief. Are you seriously trying to blame Harrison for this? He followed all proper procedures for his installation. You called the inspector, Patricia. This is entirely on you. He should have worked with the HOA to use our approved contractors, Patricia insisted. I decided to speak up. Who are your approved contractors, Patricia? Because if budget propane is on that list, I'm glad I didn't use them. Some residents chuckled, but Patricia looked furious. You've caused nothing but problems since you moved here. I installed a safe, code-compliant propane system on my own property. The inspector praised it as exemplary. The only problem here is that the HOA's system was neglected and unsafe. That's not my fault. Craig stood up. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in Patricia Cunningham as HOA president. She has demonstrated negligence in her duties, specifically failing to address safety concerns that put our community at risk. The room went silent. A vote of no confidence was serious business. Patricia's face turned white, then red. You can't do that. According to our bylaws, any board member can call for such a vote, which then requires a majority of homeowners present at a meeting to pass. This is a properly noticed meeting with a quorum present. We can vote right now. Tom Bradley looked uncomfortable but nodded. Craig is correct about the procedure. This is ridiculous, Karen Winters said. Patricia has served this community faithfully for years. And in that time, how many other safety inspections have been neglected? Craig asked. We need a full audit of all HOA maintenance and safety compliance. For all we know, there are other issues waiting to cause problems. A woman I didn't recognize stood up. I move that we conduct a comprehensive safety audit of all HOA facilities and systems. I second that motion, another resident called out. Patricia was losing control of the meeting and she knew it. Fine. We'll conduct an audit, but I'm not stepping down. The vote of no confidence is already on the floor, Craig said. We need to address it. All in favor of removing Patricia Cunningham as HOA president. Hands went up around the room. I didn't vote since I wanted to stay out of the board politics, but it was clear the majority of residents had lost faith in Patricia's leadership. All opposed. Only a few hands, mostly from Patricia's closest friends. The motion passes. Patricia, you're removed as president effective immediately. The board will need to elect a new president at our next meeting. Patricia stood up, shaking with rage. This is illegal. You can't just remove me. I'll sue the HOA. You can sue if you want, Craig said calmly. But the bylaws clearly allow for this process. You're welcome to remain on the board as a regular member, but you're no longer president. Patricia grabbed her papers and stormed out, followed by Karen Winters and Deborah Sheffield. The room buzzed with conversation after their dramatic exit. Craig took over running the rest of the meeting. They discussed the immediate need to repair the propane system, approved hiring Desert Mountain Propane despite the higher cost, and scheduled a comprehensive safety audit of all HOA facilities. The meeting finally adjourned around 9:30. As people filed out, Several residents stopped to thank me for inadvertently exposing the HOA's negligence. Linda Hayes shook my hand. If you hadn't installed your propane system, and if Patricia hadn't been vindictive enough to call that inspector, who knows what could have happened? That gas leak I smelled could have caused an explosion. I'm just glad my system passed inspection, I said, and I hope they get yours fixed soon. Craig approached me as I was heading to my truck. Harrison, I want to apologize for how Patricia treated you. She's been getting more difficult over the past year, but this situation really showed her true colors. No apology needed. You stood up for what was right. Still, you got caught in the crossfire. Listen, I'm probably going to be elected president at the next board meeting. I want to make some changes, make the HOA actually serve the community instead of acting like petty dictators. Would you be interested in joining the board? We'll have 3 vacant positions after tonight. I considered it. Part of me wanted nothing to do with HOA politics. But another part realized that the only way to prevent future Patricias was to get involved. Let me think about it, I said. Right now, I just want to go home and enjoy my properly installed, inspector-approved propane system. Craig laughed. Fair enough. The offer stands. Over the next few days, things continued to develop. The local news picked up the story about the HOA's shut-down propane system, though they didn't use names. The angle was about the importance of proper maintenance and the risks of using unlicensed contractors. Desert Mountain Propane got some good publicity out of it, with Mike Rothstein interviewed about proper propane safety. I received a formal letter from the HOA, signed by Craig as acting president, officially approving my propane installation and apologizing for any inconvenience caused by the previous board's actions. The letter would go in my homeowner file, protecting me from any future complaints about the system. Patricia, Karen, and Deborah all resigned from the board entirely after the vote of no confidence. According to Craig, Patricia had threatened legal action, but her lawyer apparently told her she had no case. The county fire marshal's office did follow up on the budget propane situation. They investigated several other properties that Budget Propane had serviced and found similar violations. The company's owner was facing significant fines and possible criminal charges for operating without a valid license. Desert Realty Management also made changes, implementing new tracking systems for safety inspections and maintenance requirements. They sent a formal apology letter to all Desert View Estates residents and offered a detailed report on the status of every HOA system and facility. Mike Rothstein and his crew completed the repairs to the HOA propane system 3 weeks after the initial inspection. The work took longer than expected because the damage was more extensive than initially thought. The final cost came to just over $14,000, paid from the HOA's reserve fund. Inspector Chen returned for the final inspection and gave the system a clean bill of health. Craig invited me to be there when the system was approved, and Inspector Chen shook both our hands. It's rare that I see a situation turn out this well, he said. Usually, people resist addressing violations. Your community took this seriously and did it right. We had proper motivation, Craig said, glancing at me with a smile. The community barbecue event was rescheduled for the following month. Craig insisted I be the guest of honor, which was embarrassing but also kind of nice. People who I'd never spoken to before came up to thank me, share their own HOA horror stories, and express relief that the community was in better hands now. I did eventually accept Craig's offer to join the board. The election was held 6 weeks after the dramatic meeting, and I was voted in along with 2 other new members who were actually reasonable people interested in serving the community, rather than wielding petty power. Our first major initiative was reviewing and updating all HOA policies to ensure they made sense and served legitimate purposes rather than just giving the board control over minutiae. We also implemented quarterly safety audits of all common areas and required the management company to provide detailed monthly reports on all maintenance and inspection activities. Patricia moved out of Desert View Estates about 4 months after everything went down. I heard through the neighborhood gossip chain that she couldn't handle the embarrassment of being removed from the board and facing former neighbors who knew about her negligence. Her house sold quickly, and a nice family from California moved in. Karen Winters and Deborah Sheffield kept lower profiles after resigning from the board. Karen actually apologized to me at a neighborhood gathering, admitting she had been so focused on backing Patricia that she hadn't paid attention to important issues like safety maintenance. The most satisfying moment came about 6 months after the initial inspection. I was working in my garage with the door open when a car pulled up. A middle-aged couple got out, looking around at the neighborhood. "Excuse me," the man called out. "Do you live here?" "I do. Can I help you?" "We're thinking about buying a house in this development. Can you tell us what the HOA is like?" I smiled. "It's actually pretty good. They take safety seriously, keep up with maintenance, and mostly leave people alone as long as you're not doing anything unreasonable. We've got good people on the board who actually care about the community." The woman looked relieved. "That's great to hear. We've heard so many HOA horror stories. We had some issues in the past," I admitted, "but they got resolved. New leadership made a big difference." They thanked me and drove off to meet their real estate agent. I went back to my work, feeling good about being able to honestly recommend the community. Later that evening, I was grilling steaks on my back patio, powered by my perfectly legal, inspector-approved, code-compliant propane system. The generator sat nearby, ready to kick in automatically if the power went out, which it did occasionally during summer storms. My phone rang. It was Craig. "Hey Harrison, just wanted to give you a heads up. We got the results back from the comprehensive safety audit. And everything else checked out fine. Turns out the propane system was the only major issue. The auditor said it's a miracle nothing bad happened given the condition it was in. Good thing we got it fixed then." "No kidding. Listen, I'm putting together a proposal for the next board meeting. I want to establish a safety committee that reports directly to the board and conducts monthly inspections of common areas. Would you be willing to chair it?" I laughed. "You're determined to keep me involved in HOA business, aren't you? Someone needs to keep an eye on things." "You've already proven you take safety seriously." "All right, I'll do it. But I'm not dealing with any more Patricias. Deal? Though I think word has spread enough that any future Patricias will think twice before messing with you." After we hung up, I thought about how strange the past few months had been. I had moved to Desert View Estates looking for a quiet place to live and work. Instead, I had ended up in the middle of HOA drama that resulted in a complete board shakeup, exposed safety violations, and legal troubles for an unlicensed contractor. All because I wanted a backup generator and an outdoor kitchen. The funny thing was, if Patricia had just left me alone, none of this would have happened. My propane system was behind a fence, not visible from anywhere, and completely compliant with all regulations. Her vindictiveness and desire to flex her HOA authority had backfired spectacularly, exposing the negligence and corruption she had been ignoring or actively participating in. I finished grilling my steaks, appreciating the steady blue flame from my propane grill. No leaks, no corroded valves, no expired certifications. Just clean, safe, properly installed equipment that worked exactly as it should. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike Rothstein. He was sending me a photo of a new installation his company had just completed, along with a message. Another satisfied customer, thanks to your referral. You're good for business. I had been recommending Desert Mountain Propane to anyone who asked about my system. Mike's business had apparently picked up significantly as word spread about the quality of his work and the disaster that resulted from using cheap, unlicensed contractors. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from Desert Realty Management. They wanted to hire me as a consultant to review their safety protocols and inspection tracking systems for all the communities they managed. The pay was generous, and it would be interesting work that I could do remotely on my own schedule. I accepted the offer, figuring that my software development skills combined with my newfound expertise in HOA safety management could actually benefit a lot of communities. If I could help prevent other neighborhoods from facing the same dangerous situation we had dealt with, that seemed worthwhile. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia had tried to use the HOA to shut down my propane system, and instead, I ended up on the HOA board, chairing a safety committee, consulting for the management company, and having the most compliantly installed propane system in the entire county. 3 months after that, I was at a board meeting when Craig brought up an interesting item. The county was creating a new residential safety advisory committee and had asked for HOA representatives to participate. He nominated me, and the board approved unanimously. How did I become the safety guy? I asked afterward. Craig grinned. Because you're the only person I know who responded to HOA harassment by having the most thoroughly documented, perfectly installed propane system in Nevada. That's dedication. That's called covering your ass, I corrected. Same thing. But seriously, you've been good for this community. Property values have actually gone up since we fixed the safety issues and changed how the board operates. People want to live in neighborhoods where the HOA functions properly. He wasn't wrong. Desert View Estates had gotten a reputation as a well-managed community with a functional HOA that actually served homeowners rather than harassing them. Real estate agents mentioned it in listings. New families moving in specifically cited the HOA's reasonable policies and safety focus. All because Patricia Cunningham couldn't leave well enough alone. I sometimes wondered what would have happened if she had just approved my propane system in the first place, or even if she had ignored it entirely. The HOA's dangerous propane system would have continued operating until something catastrophic happened. Someone could have been seriously injured or killed. In a twisted way, her vindictiveness had saved lives. But I wasn't going to give her credit for that. She hadn't been concerned about safety, only about control and authority. The fact that her actions inadvertently led to discovering serious safety violations was pure chance, not intention. The following summer, Desert View Estates held its annual community barbecue using the repaired and upgraded propane system. The event was the biggest turnout we'd had in years. Craig gave a speech thanking everyone who had helped improve the community, and to my embarrassment, he specifically mentioned me. Harrison Zimmerman joined our neighborhood 3 years ago and has become an invaluable member of our community. His attention to detail and commitment to doing things right has raised the bar for all of us. Please join me in thanking him for his service on the board and his leadership of our safety committee. People applauded, and I awkwardly waved from my seat. I wasn't great with public recognition, but I appreciated the sentiment. After the formal part of the event ended and people were eating, Linda Hayes approached me with her husband. "Harrison, I never properly thanked you. I've been thinking about that gas leak I smelled. It was near where kids play in the pool. If something had happened, if that system had failed catastrophically. She trailed off, emotion in her voice. But it didn't, I said gently. We caught it in time, got it fixed, and now the system is safer than it's ever been. Because you cared enough to do things right with your own property. That matters. Her husband shook my hand. You've set a good example. I'm planning some renovations to my house, and I'm making sure everything is done properly with licensed contractors and proper permits. No cutting corners. That conversation repeated itself several times throughout the evening. People talked about home improvements they were planning, asking for recommendations for contractors, discussing safety features they were adding. The community's whole attitude had shifted toward valuing quality and safety over just finding the cheapest option. As I drove home that night, full of good food and feeling unexpectedly content with how things had turned out, my phone rang. It was Inspector Chen, which surprised me since I hadn't heard from him in months. Mr. Zimmerman, I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. What can I do for you? I'm teaching a training course for new inspectors next month, focusing on residential propane systems. I was hoping to use your installation as a case study example of how things should be done. Would you be willing to have a small group come by for a site visit? Of course. Happy to help. Excellent. I'll also be discussing the Desert View Estates situation as a cautionary tale about the importance of following up on commercial inspections and the dangers of unlicensed contractors. Your role in that situation made for an interesting case study on how proper homeowner diligence can have wider community impacts. I just wanted a working generator, I said with a laugh, and in the process, you may have saved lives. That's not a small thing. Thank you for being willing to help with the training. After we scheduled the details and hung up, I sat in my driveway for a moment, thinking about the strange journey that had started with a simple home improvement project. I had dealt with an overbearing HOA president who tried to shut down my legal project out of spite. Instead, her actions led to discovering serious safety violations, resulted in her removal from power, sparked comprehensive reforms in how the HOA operated, and ultimately made the entire community safer and more functional. And my propane system, the one Patricia had been so determined to find fault with, had become a training example for inspectors across the county. I finally got out of my truck and walked around to my backyard, where my propane tank sat on its concrete pad, properly maintained and certified, ready to power my generator or outdoor cooking whenever I needed it. The evening was cooling off, and I decided to fire up the grill for a late snack. As the burner ignited with a steady blue flame, I thought about all the people who cut corners, who hired cheap, unlicensed contractors, who ignored safety regulations and maintenance requirements. They thought they were saving money or avoiding hassle. But doing things right, following the rules, using quality contractors, and maintaining proper documentation had saved me from HOA harassment, exposed a dangerous situation, and turned into unexpected opportunities. It had also given me peace of mind, knowing that my home systems were safe and reliable. I grilled some vegetables, enjoying the quiet evening and the satisfaction of knowing that my simple insistence on doing things properly had rippled out to affect an entire community in positive ways. The next morning, I was working at my computer when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman in her 30s holding a clipboard. "Hi, I'm Jennifer Martinez from the County Planning Department. I'm doing a follow-up survey on residential propane installations in this area. Do you have a few minutes to answer some questions?" I invited her in and answered her questions about my installation process, costs, contractor selection, and experience with inspections. She seemed particularly interested in the HOA situation. Your case has generated some interesting discussions in county planning meetings, she said. We're considering requiring HOA board members to complete safety training and certification courses. The idea is to prevent situations like what happened here, where board leadership didn't understand or prioritize safety compliance. That seems like a good idea. A lot of people get on HOA boards without really understanding their responsibilities. Exactly. We're also looking at ways to improve oversight of HOA common area facilities. Your situation exposed gaps in the current system. She finished her notes and stood up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Zimmerman. Your cooperation is helpful for our policy review. After she left, I realized that the effects of that initial propane installation were still expanding. County policies might change. HOA board training requirements might be implemented. Other communities might benefit from lessons learned in Desert View estates. All because Patricia Cunningham had called an inspector, expecting him to shut down my system, and instead, he had shut down hers. The weeks continued to pass, and life in Desert View estates settled into a comfortable routine. The new board functioned well, focused on actual community needs rather than petty power plays. The safety committee I chaired conducted monthly inspections and caught minor issues before they became major problems. Property values continued to rise as the neighborhood gained a reputation for being well managed. I kept my consulting work with Desert Realty Management, helping them improve safety protocols across all their managed communities. It was satisfying work that combined my technical skills with practical problem solving. Mike Rothstein's business thrived, with more homeowners and HOAs switching to his company after seeing the difference between his professional approach and Budget Propane's negligent service. Budget Propane eventually went out of business entirely after their legal troubles and license suspension became permanent. One evening, about a year after the initial inspection incident, I was at a board meeting when Craig announced that he would be stepping down as president due to work commitments requiring him to travel more. The board needed to elect a new president. Tom Bradley, the pharmacist who had been on the board through all the drama, nominated me. I was surprised, but the nomination was seconded, and before I knew it, I was unanimously elected as the new HOA president. Congratulations, Craig said afterward, shaking my hand. You've earned it. This community trusts you. I just wanted a working generator, I said, repeating what had become my running joke about the whole situation. And now you're running the HOA. Funny how life works out. As president, I continued the reforms we had started, keeping the focus on serving the community rather than controlling it. We simplified the architectural review process, making it faster and clearer for homeowners who wanted to make improvements. We invested in preventive maintenance to avoid expensive emergency repairs. We communicated transparently with residents about board decisions and financial matters. The transformation of Desert View estates from a community with an overbearing, negligent HOA to one with a functional, service-oriented board became something of a local success story. Other HOAs reached out asking for advice on how to improve their operations. I often thought back to that afternoon when Patricia had marched across my lawn, clipboard in hand, ready to cause trouble over my propane installation. She had expected to intimidate me into compliance, to assert her authority and put me in my place. Instead, she had set in motion a chain of events that cost her position, exposed her negligence, reformed an entire community's governance, and eventually resulted in me taking over as HOA president. The propane tank still sat behind my house on its concrete pad, properly maintained and inspected annually. Every time I walked past it, I smiled, remembering how one simple home improvement project had changed everything. My generator had kicked in automatically several times during power outages, keeping my home comfortable and my work computers running. The outdoor kitchen got regular use, hosting board members and neighbors for casual gatherings. The system worked flawlessly, exactly as designed. Inspector Chen had been right to praise it as exemplary. It was more than just a compliant installation. It was a testament to doing things right, even when it cost more or took more effort. That philosophy had guided me through the HOA drama and continued to guide my decisions as board president. Desert View Estates was a better community because of it. Safer, better managed, more welcoming. Property values reflected that improvement. Resident satisfaction surveys showed dramatic positive changes. People actually liked their HOA now, which was rare enough to be remarkable. And it had all started because I wanted to install a propane system for my generator and outdoor kitchen, and Patricia Cunningham couldn't leave well enough alone. I sometimes wondered where Patricia had ended up, whether she had learned anything from the experience. Probably not. People like her rarely did. They blamed others for their failures and never examined their own actions. But that was no longer my concern. I had a community to serve, a board to lead, and a propane system that worked perfectly, certified by the county as one of the best residential installations Inspector Chen had ever seen. Life was good in Desert View Estates. The HOA actually functioned as it should, helping residents and maintaining community standards without harassment or overreach. We had come a long way from the days of Patricia's petty tyranny. And every time I fired up my grill, connected to my inspector-approved, perfectly installed propane system, I appreciated the irony of how we had gotten here. Sometimes doing the right thing, even in small matters, had larger consequences than anyone could predict. My phone buzzed with a text from Craig, board meeting next week. Also, Channel 7 News wants to interview you about HOA reform. Interested? I typed back. Sure, as long as they get a shot of my propane setup. His response came quickly. Of course, that's the star of the show. I laughed and went back to my work, grateful for the unexpected journey that had brought me here, and looking forward to continuing to serve a community that had become truly home.